Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
Today, our guest is Chris Sasser. Chris has a new book out entitled Bags. It's helping your kids lighten the load. And when we travel, Ron, we've traveled numerous times together.
Yes,
and
we have.
There are a couple of people on the D6 team that pride themselves in how light they are able to travel for quite a period of time. It never ceases to amaze me. I'm like worse than my wife when it comes to shoes. There is no way that I can travel with only one pair of shoes. Even if it's 2 days, there's got to be a new pair for each day. And so I'm always checking a bag, regardless.
You are not my friend when we travel.
I have not yet. I need to find something to knock on. I have not lost a bag to an airline yet. Famous last words, but I have to bring enough clothes and shoes that I'd rather have it and not need it than need it, not have it. But Ron, what is your philosophy when it comes to baggage when you travel, my man?
Well, first and foremost, baggage is got several items connected to it when I travel. Number one, I have traveled enough that I have had my bag lost. In fact, I traveled to another country once early on. This is probably why I have this philosophy. The first year I started traveling, I was flying to Canada. I was going to be gone about 4 or 5 days. They lost my bag and they brought it to me on day 4 of a 5-day trip. And so for me, it's about making sure I have what I need. But more than that, because I'm on the road so often, I don't want to be standing in line waiting for things. So this may sound horrible in there, but I stay in the same type of hotel. I prefer a Hampton Inn or a Hilton Garden Inn. I can check in before I get there on my app. I don't even have to stop by the front desk. I can go straight to my room. When I get my rental car, I don't stop at the counter. I go straight to the place, pick up my car, drive out. I don't want to stand at a luggage carousel and wait for the luggage to come out. If I did that for all the trips I do each year, I'd lose a week and a half of time. That's why I do it, to be very fair.
That is some solid reasoning right there, my friend.
Well, it is. And so time is very valuable. And so I kind of make fun of our team members who check. I'm like, yeah, well, and I often do. I'll just go straight to get the rental car. I'll go pick up my rental car. I'll get a cup of coffee, and then I'll swing by curbside, and then I'll still have to wait 5 or 10 minutes for them to walk out after getting their bag.
And all the extroverts have made new friends at the baggage carousel.
Exactly.
And hanging out.
There's one more benefit. Thank you for reminding me of that. I just have to avoid all people. You so put that in a totally different context I've not even considered, but it's a reward. That is brilliant, Josh.
Oh, I do what I can.
Oh,
guys, if you are a parent or you work with kids, this podcast is for you. I encourage you to lean in, grab whatever note-taking device that you like to use, because Chris here is about to give you plenty of nuggets and wisdom for you to not only connect with kids, but maybe help those in the parenting realm that are in your sphere of influence and those that you may serve at your church. So we look forward to seeing you on the other side of this interview, but settle in and enjoy Chris Sasser.
D6 Family is excited to introduce to you Top Reads for Busy Leaders, 12 articles curated weekly for you, for free. Each week, Top Reads for Busy Leaders will send you a dozen articles or blogs that cover a variety of relevant topics, such as culture, leadership, ministry, current research and data trends, parenting, and more. To subscribe to this free weekly email, visit randallhouse.com and sign up for Top Reads for Busy Leaders. That's randallhouse.com.
Today, I am joined by Chris Sasser. Chris is the pastor of family ministries at Port City Community Church in Wilmington, North Carolina. He has served in full-time ministry since 1993, working with children's, middle school, high school, college, and parent ministries. He has a passion for equipping and encouraging parents and leaders to help the next generation walk with God. Chris is married to Karin, and they have two teenagers, CJ and Kylie. Chris's brand new book is called Bags, Helping Your Kids Lighten the Load. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yes.
I may be wrong on this, but is there a battleship
Oh,
there?
Yes, it's the USS Wilmington.
Okay.
The USS North Carolina.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I have family in North Carolina. I've heard a lot about it, but I've never actually seen the ship there.
So we actually moved to Wilmington about 9 years ago and took our kids there as we were kind of in the moving process. And I remember I took a picture of my son that was the same exact picture that I had when I was like 10 years old, because we lived in Raleigh, North Carolina, about 2 hours from Wilmington. So we'd always make the trip to see the battleship. So it's been fun to live in that city now because it's a big tourist attraction for folks.
Very cool.
And we're on the beach, so that's always good.
Not a bad thing.
Yeah, we like it.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk about your book today. Brand new book just came out. Like I said, it's called Bags, Helping Your Kids Lighten the Load. Something that I think that a lot of parents are going, yeah, we need this. What are some of the most common emotional bags that you're seeing kids carry these days?
Well, I think there are a lot of them, and I'll tell you the story of kind of where the book came from, because I never really aspired to write a book. I've been in family ministry really for all my life, and obviously around kids and parents and families, but about 10 years into my ministry, I was a youth pastor, and I began to be asked to officiate weddings for kids who had been kind of a part of the church and part of the youth group. And so, of course, I wanted to say yes to be a part of that moment. So sometimes we knew kind of one of the kids who had come through youth group and they had met their future spouse, in college or a little bit later on. Sometimes we knew them both and they were kind of destined in 7th grade to be together and they just had to figure it out. But my wife and I would have this premarital process with them, and it would start with them having dinner with us at our house. And we would say, act like you don't know us, and let's play this game, and give us your faith story, your life story, and your family story. And what would happen is these kids, and they were young adults, but they're still kind of kids, is they would unload on us. And they'd tell us some things that we knew, some things that we didn't know, and it just was all this emotional baggage that they were carrying, and they were stepping into what you hope is one of the most exciting times of their life, going into a new marriage, and they were all just carrying all this emotional baggage that they had no idea what to do with. So the next 6 sessions were helping them to unpack their bags, and I started doing what a lot of parents do is I started saying, okay, like our kids were young, like what are my kids going to be saying when they're in somebody else's kitchen, or they're in the counselor's office when they're in their 20s. And I'm a diehard optimist. Actually, my best friend calls me stupidly optimistic sometimes. But I just started wondering, like, do my kids have to have all of this emotional baggage when they get to be in their 20s? Obviously, I'm not naive enough to think we're not all going to pack some kind of bags, if you will. But I just started thinking through, okay, like, are there ways that my kids can maybe not have all this baggage? Can I pay more attention as a parent from, let's say the age of 5 to 25 to my kids, and almost build a preventive maintenance plan for them to just have a lighter load when they get to their 20s? And so I started thinking about it, writing about it. I actually started doing focus groups with college students and young adults, and probably talked to 300-400 college students and young adults. And then I just started writing, and it just kind of flowed. And what I heard from those college students and young adults is 8 common bags. There's a lot more than 8 that we all pack. But this was just kind of what I heard over and over again. So things like relational bags. And, we all have relational bags kind of everywhere in life because of the different, interactions that we've had. And a lot of kids and young adults, they just have kind of this sadness around the key relationships in their life. Performance bags. I think kids today are getting crushed by this performance mentality that we have in school, and they have it in their sports, and they have it socially, and they have it in their family. Identity bags, rejection bags. I could list all 8 of them, but all of these bags are just sort of, they're putting our kids in a place where they're just not able to live a life that is as healthy and as free as I want my kids to live. Yeah. So I could go on, but that's that's a little bit of it.
From an emotional standpoint, are things different for kids today than they were like 20 or 30 years ago?
Absolutely, for sure. And I think a couple things. Number one is, and I heard this quote years ago, it's probably not the direct quote, but it's the concept, is that kids today are more exposed to more things at an earlier age, but they are not more mature.
Oh.
Than say they were 20, 30 years ago. And so things that, you and I probably didn't have hit us until college or beyond are hitting kids, in 5th grade. Because they have, the world in their hand for the most part with their smartphone. And so things are coming at them that are kind of messing them up emotionally, and there's no way for them to process. And then that's the other thing is, and we're all in this boat, I think, is the speed at which we have to try to process things because of the world we live in. Kids are just not equipped to be able to handle that. And so their mental capacity is not there, and they just can't keep up with the speed.
Yeah. Well, I know you've spoken about what parents can do to not help kids pack these emotional bags. Can you share some of those things?
Yeah, well, each one of the bags has kind of different suggestions, and that's one of the things that I really wanted the book to be about, was just some practical tips for parents that they can kind of do every day. And so, each bag has different practical tips, but let's just take, the performance bag, for instance. I would say help your kids know that you really love them and that their identity is not rooted in their performance. Oftentimes, I think kids feel like, certainly in the school world, certainly in the sports world, that their identity is rooted in how good they are at something. Mm-hmm. And that is some real performance baggage. And I could tell you a story about my daughter who, when she was in 7th grade, she had, I think, some school performance baggage that my wife and I weren't packing at all. I mean, we were saying, do your best. But we had to help her sort of sort through, this is not who you are. This is not your identity. Part of the way that we did that is another practical suggestion in the performance bag is just reduce the pressure at home, which for some parents is hard to hear, but there is so much pressure on our kids everywhere in life that what if home could be the place that is kind of a respite for them, to where it's not, you only got a 93, you need to kind of jack that up to get an A, or hey, like in the game today, make sure you're keeping your eye on the ball and let's get 2 hits instead of 1 hit. And there's just all this pressure that we kind of sometimes exert at home. What if we kind of reduce the pressure at home? So those are a couple kind of practical tips with the performance bag. With the relational bag, one of the things I like to say to parents a lot is to give kids time, and the way I say it is on their time, because our kids want time with us, sort of relationally as their parents. And so oftentimes they have small windows of time because we have made them so busy, and we have to give them our time when they have the time for it. 2 examples of that just with my daughter is, years ago, I was right in the middle of kind of writing this. Came home one night, it's 6:00. I've got something I'm trying to get done before dinner. My wife's cooking dinner. My son's kind of just home from practice. My daughter's home from practice. And my daughter, she's probably 12 or so at the time. She says, Dad, can we play Crazy Eights? And I'm working on something that I'm trying to get done before dinner so I can, and I'm thinking, God, I got to get this thing done. But what I've coached myself into is I have to say yes. When my kids are asking me for time, I have to say yes, because guess what? Most of the time I can say yes. And it's just, they have little windows of time. And then the most recent thing with my daughter, she's 15 now, but we'll go on drives. And it started kind of a year or two ago because of just a scheduling circumstance where the two of us were home and we're like, hey, let's just go take a drive, through the city. And we've got this kind of hour-long loop we do. We throw on some worship music and it kind of became a thing. And now, literally 3 weeks ago, 10:30 at night, she's done with her homework. Hey, Dad, you want to go on a drive? And again, I have to say yes because my 15-year-old daughter is asking for time. And I can give it to her. So we went on a hour-long drive, and we're talking about different song lyrics, and kind of she's asking questions, and we're having a great conversation. We pull in the driveway. She starts asking about Ukraine and what's going on in Ukraine, and so we can have kind of a real-world life conversation. And at midnight, I walked back in the house. I didn't have any shoes on. I literally just hopped in the car, and we took an hour-and-a-half long drive, and it was the best hour-and-a-half of my month by far. So give them time on their time is kind of a practical suggestion when it comes to the relational bag.
Yeah, well, you're talking to a recovering perfectionist, so like what you're saying is hitting home with me.
Sorry.
And I'm also thinking about like that bee. Oh man, it still bothers me in college. But yeah. Now, Chris, when we hear people talk about health, the conversation usually revolves around physical health and then to some extent mental health as well. How should we be defining what a healthy child looks like?
Well, here's the way I'll go with it. I'm going to throw another word in there too. I'm going to use the word success because I think sometimes we think healthy is kind of synonymous with successful. And I think oftentimes what we can do, even as Christians, is we can get into the mode where we want our child to be successful. Kind of in the American dream sort of light where, hey, you got to, from an early age, like in elementary school, you got to start getting the good grades so you can, be good in middle school, and you got to set up your high school career, and you got to make sure you get to the right college and meet the right person and get the right job and make the right money and blah, blah, blah. And we're just so guilty of kind of getting into that. But what I've done through this book and through this project is I've redefined what success is in parenting. And I've said what I think success is, one of the things is I want for my kids to be healthy. And it's not just the physical health. I want them to be healthy mentally. I want them to be healthy emotionally. I want them to be healthy relationally. And I want them to be healthy spiritually. Like if I can get my kids to their young adult years and they're healthy kind of in those 4 ways, I don't care where they work. I don't care how much money they make because I know a lot of adults who kind of have followed that American dream route and they get to where they do have the money and the cars and the houses and the boats and all those things. And they are not healthy in any of those areas at all. And they are miserable. And it comes out. It's the bags that they pack that come out when they're in their 30s and 40s in midlife crisis or really bad decisions. And, it tears people and families apart. So for me, I want my kids to be healthy in those 4 areas. And, it depends on the kid, how you can kind of help them get to that. But it's not the American dream. It really is being healthy emotionally, mentally, relationally, and spiritually.
Well, I want to bring the church into the mix here. How can parents in the church partner together to help kids navigate these waters?
Well, I think awareness is kind of a big thing. I think kind of deep down, we all know that all of this is going on with our kids. There's obviously a kind of a big conversation around anxiety and depression that our kids are stepping into every single day and in different ways. And so I think everybody's got to just really be aware of what's going on and then figure out kind of how can we do some preventive maintenance. And so I think, one of the things in the church, and I'm happy that this is happening in more and more churches, is having conversations around mental health and the baggage and kind of all the things that are happening to our kids. We've got to be willing to have those conversations, as leaders in the church and be able to step into those places that can be scary because one of the things we've learned at our church, because we've been having these conversations for a couple of years, is once you begin to kind of open that door of having conversations around mental health, baggage, all the things that weigh you down, you better be ready to do some care. And so churches need to be prepared to care for the kids kind of once you pop the top on the issue. And that takes a lot of adults who aren't necessarily perfect or 100% trained, but they're small group leaders. They're just people who want to be pastoral to the kids. And so that's kind of one of the things the church needs to do is just have more conversations around all of this health. And I think for parents have to just keep leaning into what the church provides and keep kind of using the church as a resource. And, we talk in a lot of different ways about parents being the primary spiritual leaders of their kids, but the church is there to help and to partner with that. And so parents need to be engaged, not just sort of with the church service, once or twice a month. Parents need to kind of model what it means to be a part of the faith community because the faith community can sort of offer a lot of healing when it comes to what's going on with these things if they're doing it well. And so parents have to lead their kids into the faith community. And so parents have to know the youth pastor and know the children's pastor and get to know a small group leader and be involved themselves so that the family can be involved in the healing of all of this. That's what I'd say. It takes effort on both sides.
Well, this has been so good. As we close out, I want to ask you, what encouragement can you offer to parents who see their child struggling emotionally?
I would say more than anything, and this is a phrase that I came up with honestly during COVID for our church leadership, and now have kind of used it with parents, is I would say focus on connection over content. Connection over content. As parents, we are really good with offering content to our kids, if you will. It's, here's how you do this, and here's how you do that. And we're always sort of kind of coaching our kids. I think as parents, we fall into almost a mechanical relationship with our kids sometimes because, we got to get up and we got to have breakfast and we got to get all the stuff together and get out the door. And then we get home, we got to get unpacked from practice and do the homework and not be late to church and all the kind of mechanical things. And it's pushing our kids through things that we have to do, but we sometimes lose the connection. And so as a parent, what I would recommend is focus on connecting with your child at every phase and at every level. And so that takes work and effort on your part. It takes coaching yourself into I have to say yes in some moments. It takes putting the phone away, if I'm quite honest. As adults, we have got to put our devices away and connect with our kids and interact with our kids because they see when they are not the priority, and they begin to see that at a really early age. And so I would say focus on connection over just the content you need to deliver to your kids, because at the end of the day, if they didn't learn how to do that thing the perfect way, but you have a relationship with them, that's like another way that I've defined success is I want a relationship with my kids when they're in their 20s. Mm-hmm. And if all I've done is kind of push them along the way and made them get a little bit better grades and be better in the sport, but there's no connection and there's no relationship, then what did I really accomplish? So connection over content is the main thing I would say for parents.
Well, the book is called Bags, Helping Your Kids Lighten the Load. This would be a great read as your kids start out the school year or in the school year or through the school year or starting summer vacation, pretty much anytime. If you have kids, if you're around kids, this is a great book to pick up because our kids are going through so much right now. And as parents, as ministry leaders, we have an opportunity to lighten that load and to help them through this. Chris Sasser, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks.
Wow, Josh, emotional bags kids carry. I think I'm convicted because kids learn to pack the way we packed, and their baggage is probably a carryover from things we have packed in our own lives. So I'm a bit convicted by this.
Yeah, to say convicted is right on for me. Especially the performance bag.
Yeah, the performance and the relational, going back to your comment about introvert and extroverted, it's just easy to be in our own world and not give our kids the time they need or that friend space that they need. Yeah, and we think we're helping them in the realm of performance, but at least for me, I thought, man, he talked about the needing of a safe place where you don't ask about grades. You don't ask or encourage about the sport or the music or whatever it might be. And I think that's important for your kids to have a safe space where that stuff doesn't matter. Yeah. Because in the end, it really doesn't. Well, we don't get that as dads, do we? No. We want to push for success. But I think, when he said we need to redefine what success looks like, that was very eye-opening. Yeah. I have been very guilty of this. As a dad, you care about grades. You care about our kids being popular, and sometimes they are an introvert like ourselves. So you think, hey, they got to do well by competing in sports or something else. And we tend to push our kids into places, as you said, that just doesn't matter. And it's not a safe space that they feel comfortable having those conversations. So it's no wonder they duck the conversations with us because dad's going to ask how this is going about performance.
Exactly right. One of the things though that was encouraging, as convicting as encouraging, it says give your kids time on their time, give them your time when they have time for it, and how he had learned to just say yes. We do this funny thing at our house. If somebody wants to go get a milkshake, every now and then, or a treat late at night, we're like, all right, it's time for a milkshake run. But if you want one, you got to wear exactly what you're wearing right now, pajamas, whatever it is, that's what you wear. And we go to Sonic or
that's
Dairy
awesome.
Queen or Andy's or whatever it is. You have to roll in whatever clothes you got on right then. And we've made some great memories, in our PJs getting ice cream, and people looking at us like, do they just not care anymore? It's like, no, we do. That's why we're dressed like this, because we're making memories.
Yeah, back when we had Cece's around, we used to do the yogurt runs in our family, but we didn't do the intentional go drive like Chris talked about, but there have been more than one occasion where we were driving home, but purposely went out of our way to keep the drive going, to keep the conversation going without going directly home. That is so valuable. And I want to kind of break this down for our listeners. There's something about the setting of being in a car that allows incredibly deep conversations to happen. And psychologists would tell us that, number one, we're not being confrontational, we're shoulder to shoulder. And number two, we've got a windshield to kind of distract us and let us kind of do that 1,000-mile stare while we're contemplating our conversations. And it is a safe place for us to just talk and keep things going. Have you had some kind of incredible deep conversations in the car with either Ryman or Hannah?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think especially over those long road trips, like you said, it's a captive audience for one. They kind of listen.
Right. That's right.
But it is you really get to know people better when you have what I like to call unhurried time.
That's right.
Or you have nothing else to do in that. That is just unplanned. That is what it is. But as you were sharing that, D6 just ran out, as you walk along the path.
Yeah.
And these days, as we drive down the road,
that's right.
You can really find those teachable moments in that time. And it's invaluable. Yeah. I mean, to be able to connect and have that time with your kids. So I encourage you to take those road trips, to get out and drive just to drive and not to necessarily have to have a destination.
So let's go back 6 episodes for just a moment to the Arlene Pellicane episode where she talked about boundaries with electronics and social areas. One of the items that my wife and I tried to practice, and I would encourage others to do, we didn't do it perfectly because what caused this to happen was the fact we weren't doing it well. If you have a car ride that's 15 or 20 minutes, consider looking at your kids, apologizing to them and saying, you know what, we haven't done our car rides well. I've heard this podcast, or I heard, this item, and say, you know what, any car ride, 20 minutes or less, we're going to do it without radio and without earbuds or jumping into our electronic worlds. And we're just going to catch up. And you see what that car time conversation will do to transform the relationship with your family members. And just volley questions back and forth. They don't have to be serious. They can just be, Josh, you got that game I love, and I've used it so many times, Mad, Glad, Sad.
Yeah.
Tell them about Mad, Glad, Sad and what that looks like in a car ride.
And we play this game on a daily basis with our kids and have since they were little. To get them talking, because you can ask your kids, how was your day? Good. What'd you learn at school? Nothing. Just one-word answers.
Yep.
We do mad, sad, glad. One thing that made you mad today, one thing that made you sad today, and one thing that made you glad. It opens them up to talk about actual experiences that they had that day. It also opens up to how you can pray for them and what's really going on in their world. The D6 app with asking the random questions that comes up, that's a great tool. The car questions. And another thing that Lena and I recently spoke on, we did a breakout session on parenting and technology and tying the D6 verse and philosophy into having as you lie down, when you wake up, those tech-free zones, just as you talked about, as you go along the path, that is a tech-free zone. In those areas that D6 points to, trying to purposefully, intentionally allow those to be, as much as you can, tech-free zones, so you can connect and impart God's word and God's truth and make that connection with your kids.
Yeah. If we don't do some of these things, I'm kind of burdened by what Chris said. He goes, ask the question, what baggage will our kids carry into adulthood, and how can we prevent it? Yeah. Wow. So engaging them at this level, stopping with the performance side, relating to them on their time when they want it. These are valuable areas. If I were you, I think I would get this book, read it with your spouse, and ask, what can we do? And spend at least a week on each chapter for the coming weeks, and lighten the load of your kids. Because if you don't, they're just going to keep pouring more and more in. And before you know it, you'll have a luggage as big as Josh's with 20 pair of shoes for a 5-day trip. Sorry, Josh, had to throw that in.
That's all right. You stepped on my toes.
I did. Unintended. That's right. No, we do. So let us challenge you. Grab this book, take a look at it, and see what you can do to lighten your kids' load, and make sure you don't transfer your baggage to your kiddos' baggage. Next week, we've got Michelle Craddock will be our guest, and we are praying for you to look for opportunities to meet your kids on their time. Till then, we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.